Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us.
It's great to be back.
Today we're going to be unpacking some pretty intense material and...
Yeah, from a pretty interesting figure, too.
Yeah, that's right. We're talking about Osho.
Yeah, Osho. So for those who haven't heard of him, Osho was an Indian spiritual leader.
I actually haven't heard of him before.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, you're in for a ride.
Okay.
Basically, Osho was really known for kind of turning conventional wisdom on its head.
Okay.
And we're going to be diving deep into a collection of his discourses
Okay.
that were originally delivered in Hindi.
Interesting.
But they explore these kind of universal human experiences that I think we can all relate to.
Okay, like what kind of things?
So things like sexuality,
Oh, wow. Okay.
love, and the journey to spiritual enlightenment,
Okay.
or as Osho calls it, Samadhi.
Samadhi.
Yeah, it's a Sanskrit word.
Okay.
But basically it refers to a state of pure awareness.
Pure awareness.
Yeah, kind of like being so fully present that the boundaries of your individual self kind of dissolve.
And you experience this really profound connection to the universe.
Okay, that sounds pretty intense.
It is a big concept,
Yeah.
but we'll definitely circle back to that later on.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Good. Okay.
So, maybe to kind of ease into this a little bit.
Sure.
Let's start with something that Osho is pretty well known for,
Uh-huh.
his perspective on sex.
Yes, right off the bat.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll notice that he has a very, very provocative style.
Okay.
He's not afraid to tackle topics that a lot of people consider taboo.
Right.
And he uses a lot of humor and storytelling to kind of illustrate his points.
I mean, that's what I love about doing these deep dives with you.
I'm glad.
It's always a mental workout,
Yeah.
but it's always fun and entertaining.
Yeah, good, good.
I like that. So, what is it about Osho's view of sex that is so different?
So he starts by pointing out this paradox.
Okay.
So we live in a culture that's seemingly obsessed with sex.
I mean, it's everywhere, right?
It's everywhere, you know, advertising, movies, music. But at the same time, there's this like deep discomfort
Yeah.
around talking about it openly and honestly.
It's like we're told it's this big, exciting thing,
Yeah.
but then we're also supposed to feel ashamed of it.
Exactly. It's like this double standard
Yeah.
that creates all these messed up attitudes and behaviors.
Yeah, I can see that.
And he illustrates this point
Okay.
with this really funny anecdote about a man who receives flowers from his wife while he's sick in bed.
Okay.
And the man, thinking that the flowers are food, proceeds to eat them.
He eats the flowers.
He eats the flowers.
Okay, I can already tell
Yeah.
that Osho is not your typical spiritual teacher.
No, he is not.
But I kind of see what he's getting at.
Okay.
It's like our desires can be so misdirected, especially when we don't acknowledge them
Exactly.
and deal with them consciously.
It's all about awareness.
Okay, so this is where his perspective on love comes in.
Yes.
Because he makes this clear distinction
Ah.
between sex and love.
Yes.
So he sees sex as this very natural, primal energy.
Yes. Very powerful, potentially even divine.
But marriage.
Marriage he sees as a societal construct,
Okay.
a set of rules of expectations that can actually stifle love rather than nurture it.
So he's not saying marriage is bad,
No, not inherently.
just that it can be a trap if we're not careful.
Exactly. He's saying, hey, look at why you're really getting married.
Right.
Is it truly out of love? Or is it because of societal pressure,
Yeah.
fear of being alone,
Yeah.
or some other external factor?
That makes a lot of sense.
And he uses this really striking analogy
Okay.
of a king who, fearing a poisoned well in his city, builds a wall around his palace to protect himself and his queen.
Okay, well, on the surface, that sounds pretty reasonable.
Right, protect yourself and the one you love from danger.
Yeah.
But what happens is that the king and queen end up completely cut off from the life of the city. They miss out on all the vibrancy, the connection, the richness of life outside their palace walls.
So the wall, in this case, represents the rigid structure of marriage. Or maybe even the fear and shame that we've built up around expressing our sexuality freely.
Yeah, you got it.
And then the poisoned well is like the vulnerability that comes with love, the potential for getting hurt or rejected.
Exactly. He's saying that by shutting ourselves off from these natural impulses, from love and connection, from really opening ourselves up to the full spectrum of human experience,
Yeah.
we're actually diminishing our own lives.
Okay, so he's definitely challenging the status quo here.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's not just about romantic relationships, is it? He
Uh-huh.
also had some pretty strong opinions about how society in general treats love.
Absolutely. He was very critical of the pressure
Yeah.
that society puts on young people especially
Yeah.
to avoid exploring love and connection.
Right.
Like somehow suppressing that natural urge is going to make them better people or more successful.
Right.
And he believed that this kind of repression actually stunted their emotional growth.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, okay, so what's the alternative? If we're not supposed to suppress these desires,
Yeah.
does that mean we should just let them run wild?
Well, not exactly. His next point is really crucial.
Okay.
He argues that suppressing these natural urges doesn't actually make them disappear. It just distorts them.
Okay.
And it often leads to all sorts of psychological problems.
Well, yeah, I can imagine if we just went around acting on every single impulse that we have.
Well, it's more nuanced than that.
Okay.
It's not about blind indulgence. It's about awareness.
Okay.
He uses this really powerful image of a man who claims to be nonviolent,
Okay.
but inside, he's harboring this volcano of rage.
So it's like keeping a lid on a boiling pot.
Exactly.
Eventually the pressure builds up and the whole thing explodes.
Exactly. And he also tells this story about a sadhu,
Okay.
a holy man who was trying to help a woman in need.
Okay.
But the more he tries to deny his attraction to her, the more fixated he becomes,
Oh, wow.
to the point where it's all he can think about.
So he's saying that trying to push down these natural feelings can actually backfire
Yes.
and make them even stronger.
Exactly.
This sounds a lot like what we know about psychology today
Oh,
with
yeah.
repression and how that can lead to all kinds of mental health issues.
Absolutely. Osho was way ahead of his time in understanding how suppressing our authentic selves
Yeah.
can create this breeding ground for neurosis and hypocrisy.
Right.
He believed that true transformation begins not with denial, but with honesty and self-knowledge.
So instead of pretending we don't have these feelings, we need to face them head on.
Yes, acknowledge them, understand them.
And then what?
And then we can start to make conscious choices about how we want to express them,
Okay.
rather than being ruled by these unconscious impulses.
So it's about taking responsibility
Exactly.
for our own feelings.
Yes, and he tells this anecdote
Okay.
about a man who wants to return a stolen umbrella.
Okay. A stolen umbrella.
Yes, but he's so tormented by guilt that he can't stop thinking about it.
What does a stolen umbrella have to do with any of this?
It's a metaphor
Okay.
for the power of facing our true nature, even the parts that we might want to hide.
Okay.
The man is tormented by guilt, but only by acknowledging what he's done can he find peace.
I see.
It's the same with our desires.
Uh,
We can't truly move beyond them until we first acknowledge and understand them.
this is starting to sound like a pretty radical approach to spirituality.
It is?
Yeah, it's not about renouncing the world or denying ourselves pleasure,
Right.
but rather using self-awareness as a tool for growth.
Exactly.
It's almost like embracing our humanity, even the messy parts,
Yes,
is a necessary step on the path to enlightenment.
absolutely. And that leads us to another key aspect of Osho's philosophy,
Okay.
moving beyond labels.
Okay.
He believed that all these labels and roles that we assign ourselves and each other
Yeah.
actually prevent us from seeing ourselves and others authentically.
This is really resonating with me. This whole idea of facing our true nature. Even the parts of ourselves we might want to hide.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me wonder how much we limit ourselves
Right.
by trying to fit into these neat little boxes that society creates for us.
Exactly.
You know, the good girl, the rebel, the successful entrepreneur, the perfect parent.
Yeah, all these roles, like,
Are we even aware of how much those labels are shaping our behavior and our relationships?
that's such a great point. And, Osho would say that those labels are often based on fear and judgment.
Right.
We judge ourselves, we judge others, and we create all these artificial barriers between us.
Yeah.
He does this funny story about Swami Ram, who actually enjoyed being insulted
What?
because it showed people were relating to him as a person,
Oh, wow.
not as some holy figure.
Okay.
So,
Right. So it takes it away from the label.
exactly.
And it makes it more about the human connection.
Exactly.
So remember, Osho's ultimate goal is to guide us toward a state of spiritual enlightenment.
Yes.
That state of pure awareness that we talked about earlier.
Samadhi.
Samadhi. But his approach is anything but conventional.
It's very unique.
Okay, so how do we even begin to apply these ideas to our lives?
That's a great question.
This is a lot to take in.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There are no quick fixes or easy answers here.
Okay.
But understanding Osho's perspective on sex and love
Yeah.
and the importance of self-awareness is a great place to start.
I already feel like my mind is expanding in new ways.
Good. I'm glad.
This is why I love doing these deep dives.
Me too.
They challenge us to think differently about ourselves and the world around us.
Absolutely.
So we've just kind of scratched the surface of Osho's thinking.
Yeah.
But hopefully this gives you a little taste of how his ideas can be both challenging and liberating.
Absolutely.
Welcome back. I'm still processing everything from the last part. Osho's perspective on sex and love is definitely challenging some of my assumptions.
Yeah, it's amazing how he takes these topics that are often so loaded and kind of makes us look at them in a whole new way.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that really stuck with me was his critique of marriage
Oh,
as a potential trap.
yeah.
So can we unpack that a bit more? Like, what did he see as the downsides of this seemingly universal institution?
Of course. So remember, he wasn't necessarily against the idea of marriage itself.
Okay.
What he was challenging was the way it can often become more about conforming to societal expectations than about genuine love
Okay.
and connection, you know?
Right. So it's like we're trading passion and freedom
Yeah.
for stability and predictability.
Right. And in that process, we might be losing sight of what really matters.
Uh-huh.
You know, that deep connection, that sense of aliveness that comes with truly loving and being loved.
Yeah, it's like we've bought into this idea that love should be easy and comfortable, like
Yeah.
it should just fit into this predetermined box.
Uh-huh.
But real love,
Yeah.
like the kind of love that Osho is talking about, is messy
Yes.
and unpredictable and often requires us to step outside of our comfort zones.
Exactly. And,
Yeah.
you know, this really resonates with what we see happening in relationships today.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
People staying together out of obligation.
Right. Or fear of being alone.
Yeah. Or just because they're afraid of what other people will think
For sure.
if they break up.
Yeah.
So they might even convince themselves that they're still in love,
Right.
even when the spark is long gone.
Yeah, it's like we've lost touch with what real love actually feels like.
Right. And so Osho's really inviting us to question
Yeah.
whether our relationships are truly based on love or on these societal pressures and expectations.
That makes sense.
Are we showing up authentically,
Mm-hmm.
or are we just playing roles?
Yeah, this makes me think about how we often confuse love with possession.
Oh, interesting.
Like we talk about finding the right person
Mhm.
as if love is something outside of ourselves
Yes.
that we need to acquire.
Right, like it's some kind of commodity.
Exactly. But what if true love is more about cultivating a state of being, a way of relating to ourselves and to the world around us,
You're getting it.
rather than something we get from another person?
That's a really profound insight, and it's a core principle in Osho's philosophy.
So it's less about finding love and more about becoming love.
Exactly. Love is something we cultivate within ourselves.
Wow, that's a powerful shift in perspective.
It is.
It takes the focus away from external validation
Uh-huh.
and puts it on inner growth and self-awareness.
Exactly. And that's where his emphasis on meditation and mindfulness comes in,
Okay.
because it's through these practices
Yeah,
that we can develop this deeper understanding of ourselves,
right.
our needs, our desires, our patterns.
I'm starting to see how all of this connects.
Yeah.
So we start by acknowledging our desires.
Yeah.
We question the societal norms
Right.
that limit our experience of love.
Yes.
And then we cultivate this deeper sense of love within ourselves.
Exactly.
Okay, but how does this lead to samadhi,
Right.
that state of enlightenment that Osho
Yes.
talks about? It's all part of the journey. Remember, Osho doesn't offer any quick fixes
Yeah.
or easy answers. He's not going to give you a 10-step program
Right.
to enlightenment.
So it's more about the journey than the destination.
It's both, really.
Oh.
So the destination samadhi is the state of pure awareness,
Yeah.
of being fully present in the moment, free from the limitations of the ego.
Okay.
But the journey is what transforms us.
Mm-hmm.
It's what allows us to shed those layers of conditioning and step into our true selves.
This is definitely challenging my assumptions about spirituality.
Oh, yeah. How so?
I used to think it was all about renouncing worldly pleasures.
Right. Like detaching from desire.
Yeah, exactly. And transcending our human nature.
Right.
But Osho's approach seems much more grounded,
Yeah,
more integrated.
absolutely. He's not about denying our human experience.
Okay.
He's about embracing it fully.
So it's not about denying our human nature,
Yeah.
but rather about understanding it
Yes.
and using it as a stepping stone toward something greater. Exactly. It's about seeing the divine potential within the human experience,
Oh,
even in the aspects that we might consider taboo or shameful.
this is kind of blowing my mind. It's like he's saying that true spirituality isn't about escaping from the world,
Right.
but rather about finding a deeper connection to it,
Yes.
to ourselves and to each other.
That's beautifully said. And it's through that connection, that sense of oneness, that we can start to tap into a deeper sense of love and compassion for ourselves, for others, and for all beings. And this is where his concept of brahmacharya comes in.
Right, which is often mistranslated as celibacy.
Yeah, it's often misunderstood.
Can you tell us more about what he really meant by that term?
Sure. So for Osho, brahmacharya wasn't about repression or denial.
Okay.
It was about transforming sexual energy into spiritual energy.
So it's not about eliminating desire, but rather redirecting it.
Exactly. Recognizing that power and potential within that primal energy and channeling it towards a higher purpose.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get a glimpse of what he's talking about. But I have to admit, it's still a bit abstract for me. Like, how do we actually do that?
That's a great question. And that's where the practice of meditation becomes so essential.
Okay.
Osho believed that through meditation, we can become more aware of our energy, our thoughts, our emotions. We can learn to observe them without judgment, to see them as they are without getting swept away by them.
So it's about developing the sense of mastery over our inner world.
Yes, rather than letting our desires control us.
Right. It's about becoming the observer.
Yes.
The witness to our own experience rather than getting caught up in the drama of it all.
Yes, and as we cultivate this inner awareness, this ability to observe without judgment, we start to see the interconnectedness of everything.
Okay.
We realize that the energy within us is the same energy that animates the entire universe.
Wow. Okay, this is getting pretty deep.
It is, but it's also incredibly liberating. Because when we start to see ourselves as part of this larger web of life, when we start to feel that connection to something bigger than ourselves, it changes everything.
Wow.
It changes how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we experience the world around us.
So it's not just about personal growth.
Right.
It's about expanding our consciousness to encompass the whole of existence.
Exactly. And that's the ultimate goal of Osho's teachings.
Okay.
To help us awaken to our true nature, to our interconnectedness with all things, and to the divine potential that lies within each of us.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm feeling really inspired to explore these ideas further.
That's great.
Maybe experiment with meditation and see how I can bring more of this awareness into my own life.
That's wonderful. And, you know, what's really interesting is that his emphasis on self-awareness and the power of the present moment aligns with a lot of what we're learning today about psychology and personal growth.
That's true.
He was really ahead of his time in understanding how our conditioning, our fears, our unexamined beliefs really shape our reality.
Yeah. And that brings us back to his point about the dangers of suppression.
Right.
When we deny or repress parts of ourselves, we create this inner conflict that can manifest in all sorts of unhealthy ways.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And we might act out in destructive ways, or we might develop physical or mental health issues.
Right. It's like trying to hold a beach ball underwater.
Okay.
You might be able to keep it down for a little while,
Yeah.
but eventually it's going to pop back up with even more force.
That's such a great analogy.
And that's what Osho's trying to help us avoid.
Yeah.
He's saying, let's bring those beach balls to the surface. Let's acknowledge them, understand them, and integrate them into our wholeness.
Yeah. Embrace all parts of who we are.
So instead of fighting against ourselves,
Right.
we need to learn to accept and even embrace all parts of who we are.
Yes. The light and the shadow, the good and the bad, the beautiful and the messy.
This is where it gets really challenging, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's one thing to accept our positive qualities, but it's a whole other level to face our darkness, our fears, our insecurities.
It can be scary.
Yeah, it can be really scary to shine a light on those parts of ourselves
Right.
that we spent so long trying to keep hidden.
It's not easy. But Osho believed that facing our shadow side was essential for true spiritual growth.
Interesting.
Yeah, he argued that by acknowledging those parts of ourselves, we can actually transmute that energy into something positive.
So it's like alchemy, turning lead into gold.
Exactly. And that's where his concept of meditation becomes so powerful.
Right.
Remember, it's not just about sitting in silence and trying to empty your mind.
Okay.
It's a tool for observing our thoughts and emotions without judgment,
Right.
allowing us to see them as they are without getting swept away by them.
This reminds me of what we were talking about earlier about moving beyond labels. When we stop judging ourselves and others, when we can see beyond those superficial categories, we can start to relate to each other with more compassion and understanding.
And that's the key to creating more authentic and fulfilling relationships.
Is that right?
Osho believed that true love could only flourish in an environment of freedom and acceptance,
Right.
where we allow ourselves and others to be fully who they are,
Yeah.
without trying to fit them into a mold.
So it's not about trying to change each other,
Right.
but rather about supporting each other's growth and evolution.
Yes, recognizing and honoring each other's unique path.
Wow, we've covered so much ground in this deep dive.
Yeah, we have.
I feel like my brain is about to explode.
It's a lot to take in.
But in a good way, of course. I'm starting to see how his ideas can really challenge us to rethink
Yeah.
our approach to life, love, and spirituality.
Absolutely. It's definitely not a passive path.
Okay.
It requires us to be active participants in our own transformation. Yeah, to show up every day, to be present with ourselves and with the world around us, and to continuously seek to understand and transcend our limitations.
It's so much more empowering than this idea of spirituality
Yeah.
as some kind of escape from reality.
Exactly. And ultimately, that's what his message is all about. Empowering us to live more authentically, more joyfully, and more fully connected to ourselves, to others, and to that divine spark within us all.
Beautifully said. Okay, I think we need a moment to just kind of absorb all of this.
Yeah.
Before we wrap things up in the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore some of the key takeaways
Yes.
from Osho's teachings and what they might mean for you, our listeners. So stay tuned. Okay, wow. I think we both need a minute after that.
Yeah, to process.
Yeah, Osho's perspective on love and relationships. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling like
It's a lot.
it's a lot. It really is.
Yeah.
Like, it's making me rethink a lot of things.
Yeah, his teachings can be a lot to process, for sure. He's not afraid to kind of, like you said, really challenge those beliefs that we have about ourselves and our relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
And, the world around us.
But that's what makes him so fascinating, right?
Yeah, it's what makes it so compelling.
Yeah, like it keeps us on our toes.
Yeah, it makes us think outside the box.
Yeah.
And, question everything.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really stood out to me
Uh-huh.
was just how much emphasis he puts on self-awareness.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a recurring theme
Really?
throughout all of his teachings.
Yeah, self-awareness is key for Osho.
Yeah.
It's really the foundation
Yeah.
for everything else, for, unlocking your potential,
Yeah.
creating those fulfilling relationships, and ultimately reaching Samadhi.
Yeah. And it's not just about understanding our thoughts and emotions, right?
Right.
It's about becoming aware of like how we've been conditioned by society,
Exactly.
all the beliefs that we've internalized that might be limiting us.
Uh-huh. It's like, taking a step back and saying, okay, are these beliefs really serving me, or are they holding me back
Totally.
from, living a more fulfilling life?
It's like we need to become archaeologists of our own minds.
I like that.
Yeah.
Digging through those layers
Yeah.
to find out who we really are.
Yeah. And that process of self-discovery can be exciting,
Oh, yeah.
but also kind of scary because it
Definitely.
might mean letting go of some beliefs that have given us comfort,
Right.
even if they're no longer serving us.
It's hard to let go of those things sometimes.
Yeah, and that's where I think the courage to be vulnerable comes in.
Yes. Vulnerability is huge.
Yeah, remember that analogy of
Mhm.
the king building the wall around his palace?
Yeah. To protect himself.
Yeah, to protect himself from that poison. Well,
Yeah.
Osho's saying that real love, real connection requires us to take those walls down.
Yes. To let people in,
Yeah.
to be vulnerable.
And to kind of embrace vulnerability as a strength rather than a
Yeah.
weakness.
Exactly. It's not a weakness.
Which is hard.
It is hard.
It's really hard.
It takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, because it means letting go of control.
Right.
And being willing to kind of step into the unknown and trust.
Yeah, and trust that you'll be okay,
Yeah.
even if things don't go the way you planned.
It's like learning to dance with life.
I love that.
Instead of trying to control every step.
Yeah, just going with the flow.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where the practice of meditation can be so helpful.
Absolutely.
Because it's not about escaping from life. It's
Love
about
it.
learning to be present.
Yes, be present with what is,
Yeah.
without judgment.
So it's like learning to ride the waves of life, being present with the joy,
The ups and the downs.
contain all of it.
Without getting swept away.
Exactly. It's about cultivating that inner peace,
Yeah.
that stability.
Amidst all the chaos.
Yeah, and that inner peace, that centeredness
Yeah.
is what allows us to show up more fully
Yes.
in our relationships, to be more present with the people we love.
And create those deeper connections.
Okay, so for our listeners out there
Yeah.
who are intrigued by all of this
Mm-hmm.
and want to maybe explore Osho's teachings a little bit further,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them?
Well, I think the most important thing is to approach his teachings with an open mind
Okay.
and a willingness to question
Yeah.
your own assumptions.
Question everything.
Yeah, don't be afraid to challenge what you think you know
Yeah.
and, be open to seeing things from a different perspective.
I love that. And remember, this is not about adopting all of Osho's beliefs. It's
Yes.
about using his teachings as a catalyst.
Yes, for your own journey.
Yeah, for your own self-discovery.
Yeah, take what resonates with you and leave the rest.
Exactly. It's your journey.
It is.
You get to choose how you want to navigate it.
Exactly. And, Osho would say, don't just believe what I say.
Right.
Experiment with it. See if it works for you.
Yeah.
If it doesn't, discard it.
I love that he's encouraging us to be active participants in our own growth, to trust our own inner guidance.
Yeah. And find your own path.
And that's really, I think, one of the most empowering messages that we can take away from all of this.
Absolutely.
We have the power
We do.
to create the life that we want,
Yeah.
the love that we want,
Yeah.
and to experience the world.
In a way that's meaningful for you.
Yeah, that's fulfilling for us.
Yeah,
This has been amazing.
it has.
Thank you so much for joining us
Of course.
on this deep dive into the world of Osho.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring,
Keep growing.
keep diving deep.